joining me. I want to outline a couple new projects starting today. Making a little foray into something new for me. I've been intrigued by cigar box guitars for a good while now. So I happened to run across a few at some junk shops. And I think I picked this one to be the first one that I do anything with. It's pretty good shape. All the foil and wrapping is in good condition. Dominican Republic. We'll see how it goes on that. I'm making all this out of reclaimed lumber. This is picked this piece of wood for a neck. It's a piece of heart pine that came out of a piece of furniture out of an old house. And it's probably, the furniture pieces were probably over 110 years old before they were taken out of the house, and they were taken to a refinishing shop to be refinished, and somehow the architect changed the design plans or something, and they didn't end up using them, didn't put them back in the house. So I ended up with the pieces of furniture, and I took them apart to salvage the wood. It's pretty well flat sewn, which I'd rather have quarter sewn for a neck, but this is like iron. It's really hard, and it's very straight, so I think it'll make a good neck. So you can see it's been grooved for panels and stuff, but it's wide enough in the center that I can cut all that off, and I still have plenty of wood for a neck. So that's the neck. This is the box. I've got some purple heart that I've been sitting on for a long time. I'm going to slice off a piece of this, make a fingerboard out of that. It's going to be a 23.5 scale. A lot of your cigar box guitars now are 23 scale. It's all over the map with that kind of thing, but I'm going with the 23.5 because I'm used to using it a lot. My favorite scale length is the 23.5 Gibson Birdland, which if you're familiar with that or not, but the standard 24 3/4 Gibson scale that you see right here on this thing I got from Stu Mac about 30 years ago. If you take the 24 3/4 scale and you cut the first fret off, making the second fret be the first fret, you get a 23.5 scale. 23 7/16, it's right in that area. But it works good. You just have to make sure that when you're laying out stuff, that you compensate an extra number. Your 12th fret becomes the 13th fret. That's the first project. The second project is also in the genre of a cigar box guitar, but this one's going to be a 3-string. The other one is going to be a 4-string, and I'm going to use the same scale length, but I think I'm probably going to use standard guitar tuning because I'm new to the G, D, G tuning that's mostly used on those 3-string cigar box guitars. Some people do an E, B, E tuning with the 3 strings, but I'm going to stick with on the 4-string, just a standard guitar tuning. I think it'll be a good learning tool. It'll help me kind of concentrate on triads and stuff on the higher end of the scale frequency range. But this is where everything goes a little different. I drew this up last night. I like to use foam board because it works good for laying out stuff, and then you can cut out your body shape and you got a pattern to go by. This is basically a design that mimics a Ernie Ball Music Man axis. I've always liked that shape for some reason. I've never owned one. I always thought I'd like to own one. I looked at a picture on a computer screen and basically drew this out. I looked up the specs on a Music Man, and it's 12 5/8 across. So I downsized about the width, and the normally my necks are 2 1/4 on the end. Standard guitar, cigar box guitar necks are 1.5 inches wide. So you're taking off 3/4 of an inch. So I went down from the 12 5/8 to 11 3/4. And then I just kind of drew 2 lines from my upper bout to come in a little bit what looked proportionally right looking at the picture on the computer screen. I wasn't sure what the length was going to come out to, but I drew a line here, and then I figured out where the neck needed to join, did the bridge position, and that kind of gives me an idea of how far, looking at proportionately where the bridge sat and where the end of the guitar should be. So I went from there and I kept playing around, and I finally got a shape that I was pretty well happy with. So I think that's going to work. This one's going to be a little more upscale. I've got a piece of rosewood, Indian rosewood, I'm going to use for the fingerboard. So I'm going to slice off a piece 1.5 inches wide off of this so I can slot it, but I'm also going to radius it, and I'm actually considering binding the fretboard. I like bound fretboards. But I worked this out last night using my trusty tool and a measuring tape to get out where my bridge position would be. I'm going with a Strat style hardtail bridge with the 4 saddles, and initially I'm just going to set it up to do 1 pickup, but I am going to go ahead and chamber and allow for the wiring to add a 2nd pickup later if I want to in the bridge position. I've salvaged some mahogany, and the label on this bed said Cuban mahogany. Well, it's obviously mahogany, but what kind I don't know. But I picked this up pretty cheap, and it's got all these rails, so I got enough there. I picked a piece that's not flat sawn. It's not especially good for a neck, so I'm going to make the body out of this. I'll dress it down and clean it up and put the pieces of wood together for that. And another piece that I salvaged out of another piece that was over 100 and something years old. The house was built in the 1860s, I believe, that it came out of. A huge maple, I guess you call it a hutch, like in a kitchen for your stuff. Yeah, this piece of maple come out of that, and it is flat sawn, but it is very straight, and it's no twist in it. It's not nearly as stiff as that hard pine, but this is going to be a little more upscale guitar, and I'm going to put a carbon fiber rod in the neck. No truss rod, just a carbon fiber neck, just a rod in the neck, just to stiffen it up. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about laying out instruments. I've built a lot of instruments. I've been messing with guitars since I was 13 years old, but I've been building them for over 30. And I've never built the same thing twice. Some people fall into, they build dreadnoughts, or they build jumbos, or maybe one of each, and they just concentrate on using different woods over the years, and they learn, they really become very good at building dreadnoughts or jumbos or whatever they're interested in. I started out building whatever somebody wanted, and ended up never building the same thing twice. I've used the same forms and ended up making a flat top or an arch top or just whatever. I'm a big fan of arch tops. But when it comes to laying out a one-of-a-kind anything, your big thing that you got to worry about is scale length. Because your scale length, it decides where your bridge is going to be. If you're using a longer scale, your bridge, obviously your neck's going to be longer, but your bridge is also going to be further back toward the end of the guitar. And if you're dealing with an acoustic instrument, it's important where you place your bridge. It really it decides everything. So you got to be ready to modify whatever you're doing to fit that bridge position. This design is going to join at the 16th fret. But that's where it works out, at the 16th fret. So you can see about how long it is. Right there's the, I'm going to do a 0 fret on this one, so that's where my 0 fret will, I'm sorry, this is where my 0 fret will be. So that's one of the most important things when you're laying out any one-of-a-kind instrument. Concentrate on your scale length. Your body shape you can modify to go along with your bridge position if you want to, if you're doing an acoustic. Now, this is a solid body, so you don't have to worry about that so much. But anyway, that's the 2 projects I'm starting. And I'm going to cut this camera off now and start making a little sawdust. And I don't want to get that all over the camera. So, and I know you don't want to watch me running wood through an old saw. So I'll turn this camera back on when I have something else to show you. Thank you for joining me. And if you have an interest in what I'm doing, you know, like and subscribe, do that thing. Doesn't cost you anything. That's what they tell me. Well, all right. A blip in time for you and a few hours of eating sawdust for me. And update. The piece of maple, that flat sawn maple that I was going to make a neck out of, well, it got interested in aeronautics. It decided it wanted to be an airplane prop. So it's not going to be a guitar neck. So that required a little change in the plan. So I cut up a little more mahogany, and I was able to salvage enough of that maple to make center strip for a neck. So we have now, I don't know if you can see this, 2 pieces of mahogany that are almost perfectly quarter sawn, and it looks like there's not very much run out in them, and a piece of maple that is perfectly quarter sawn, or just about. It's 1/4 inch to go between it. So I'm going to make a 3-piece neck, and the reason this is so long is because once it's glued together, I'm going to run it through the planer, and the planer bites, and you lose about 3 inches of wood on each end. And I plan to run the plan to run the neck all the way back in the body, so that the bridge actually attaches to the neck wood. So that need a little extra length for that. Got that. Got another little piece to run out for the headstock, because I'm going to do a scarfed headstock. So I need a piece to thin down to probably around 9/16 or a half. Depends on the length of the tuners. I haven't checked that yet. And I plan on putting a veneer on top and maybe one on the back, but probably not. Let's see. The fingerboard is blanked out. Still need to set it up, and I'll probably use the super glue trick. Put some masking tape on the back, put some masking tape down, put a little super glue and glue it in place, and maybe do the same thing on each side to set me up some guides, and use a radius block to radius the fretboard. And I'd rather do that before I slot it, so I know just how deep I need to slot it on the sides. So that fingerboard is cut out of the rosewood, ready to go. The heart pine, solid as a rock, did not move, no twist. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the purple heart is cut, ready to slot for that. And let's see here. Move the scrap out of the way. The pieces of mahogany that come from that old bed are not quite wide enough to do the whole thing, so I cut a piece of maple to go between them, and that's going to glue up like this. So there'll be a maple stripe in the center. I don't know if I'm going to have to add a veneer to the back or not, and as you can see, there's still finish on this. It's kind of thin. I may have to add some to the back to leave room for the depth of the pots and the electronics. I'm hoping I don't, but I haven't really measured that far. I'm going to sand the finish off with a belt sander after this is all glued together, so I don't lose any more of the wood running it through a planer and dressing all that off. I'm just belt sand it off. So I'm going to do that. And I've got a, I don't know if you know what a quick lift is. It's a car lift. It's a brand that I bought so that I could work on my car. When I got it, it has this center section that you can put in there and move around. And this thing is perfectly flat. It makes an absolutely great gluing surface for clamping up a neck, because when you lay the wood on it, you know it's going to lay up absolutely dead straight. So now I have to glue these pieces together for the neck, and glue and clamp this panel together for the body. Radius the fretboard, slot both fretboards, and then it's just a little bit more figuring, to figure out exactly where my cuts need to be made to do my scarf joint, so forth. And I'll try to cover a little bit of that on camera so you guys can see a little bit how I do it. I don't have a lot of fancy tools, never have. I'm just trying to get by with a little bit of ingenuity and jig up what I need, and that's where, to me, the fun is. You start figuring out how to do something when you don't have all the stuff that a manufacturer has to do it. When I have some more to show you, I'll record some more. And if you're still watching, thank you. Appreciate it. Did a little bit more drawing, figuring out where everything's supposed to be. I don't know if you can see this. Get it here where you can see the lines, and I'll hold it still. You see how I drew out where the pots will be, the cavity for the pots, which I'll route from the back, and channels for the wires to run from the pickups. Got it all sanded down. This is the back. All the finish sanded off pretty quickly. The 60 grit belt. And as you can see, I have drawn out the lines. Took measurements so that I'll be able to line it up again. I know exactly how far it is from here to this line here, and from the end to the end of the board. So once I laminate everything on top of it, I can line up my pattern right back in the same exact position, because my center line is in the center of the maple strip. And I did some lightning holes, took a Forstner bit, took out some wood. And today has been super glue and masking tape day. In fact, I left this piece on here so I can show you how it's done if you're not familiar with it. Most people are, I think, but I'll pull it off and you can see there's two layers of masking tape. One gets stuck here and the other one's stuck on the piece of wood. Take super glue gel, put a few dollops on there. Don't spread it out thin, put dollops. You can see right here where all these little spots are. Well, those dollops glue good, and you don't, they're gap filling. If you don't get it down good enough, they'll take care of it. But you see, you can't take the two pieces apart. Now, some people don't like this technique, but I use it a lot. And I think one of the reasons some people don't like it is because of the quality of tape that they use. I use this 3M Scotch brand number 2020 contractor grade tape. The adhesive sticks very well, and it's a heavier paper. And if I'm doing something over a finish on a guitar or something, and I don't want the super glue to burn into the finish or ruin the finish with heat, because it does make heat when it cures, I'll put 2 or 3 layers down on that before I glue anything to it. That way, but you always want to press down, make sure everything's really well seated, and as long as you've got enough contact area, it's not really going to move on you. You're really going to have to push on it to make it move, get off your line. But now if you're trying to do a little thin strip, little tiny strip of tape, you're probably going to have problems. I've changed my mind again. I was going to do a through neck. Well, basically from all the way here, all the way back here to where the bridge bolted down. Well, I got to thinking about it and looking at it, and I thought, yeah, this is going to be too much trouble. And I really need to have the thing a little thicker because this wood's only 3/4 of an inch thick. So I thought, well, you know, if I just build it up a little bit and then put that flame maple cap on it, then I could have enough wood on the back side when I route out for the neck to have some strength on the back. And the main reason I wanted to go all the way through was because the wood was going to be so thin. So another masking tape and super glue trick, because I don't have a thickness sander, I do have a planer. I took some of the maple that I got, and I did a masking tape glue job to put this piece of maple on this piece of it's pine of some kind, but I don't even know where I got this. It was just some scrap. But I did this so that I could run it through the planer. Most planers don't go down that thin, and once you get that thin, you better start taking off little tiny bites at a time. But I run that down to about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to cap with this, and then I'm going to cap with the I think it's about 3/32 thick flame maple. It was actually a guitar back. It was shipped to me about 25, 27 years ago from LMI, and it got busted in shipping. And so they sent another one. They replaced it. Well, I didn't throw it away. I thought, well, I can use the pieces of wood for scrap, so forth. The crack didn't go all the way through the piece. It went in about 8 or 10 inches. And I was able to, the other day, I got it out and kind of clamped it up and made a work table to put it on and clamp it up and put some weight on it. And I was able to glue the crack up pretty good. So what little bit of crack there is showing, it's really close to the middle, and it's going to end up, most of it in the neck pocket. What doesn't end up in the neck pocket will be covered by the pickup, the neck position pickup. So I'm going to use it. So I've got that piece of maple to go on to add some thickness, and then that flame maple cap. So I'm going to do this in stages. I'm going to do one piece and then do the other piece. It's just too much trouble to try to line everything at one time. I got out that piece of metal that goes with my power lift that I mentioned, and I clamped up the neck wood and laminated it together. There's still one little piece that I had to the side that I may not need now because I'm going to shorten the neck and not run it all the way through. I'm just doing standard neck pocket, but I'm going to go ahead and put it together anyway just in case I need it for the scarf. Anyway, I'll show you that. You have to excuse my mess. My shop is a mess. But that is the center section to our quick lift, and it is very, very flat, and it's great for laminating stuff like this on. And you can see I've got it clamped up. I'm about ready to take it out because I'm going to need some of those clamps to rig me up a press to laminate these tops on this thing. All right, I think that's all that's new. So I guess I'll record some more video when I get the top on and get some of that done. I just finished radiusing the rosewood fretboard and wanted to give you an idea of how I went about doing it. I used to have a jig set up to a permanent jig for this. I live in South Carolina. The humidity here is terrible. You can't keep anything outside. The humidity just goes and comes and warps everything up that you try to have. So anything valuable as far as wood or any kind of stuff like that, I have to keep it inside. I keep it in a closet in the house so that it's humidity controlled. But so I've just set up a temporary jig to radius the fingerboard for this guitar, and here's my radius block. And what I did, I took masking tape and super glue. You do a lot with it. I put the masking tape down, and in fact I didn't even put masking tape on the back side of these wood strips. It's just some scrap strips of the maple that I cut up the other day off of boards. I put the rosewood fretboard glued it down in the center with masking tape on the back of it and so forth. Standard way of doing it. But I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This obviously is made to where this fits tight, keeps the alignment. But it's very important when you do this that your fretboard is dead center between this. Otherwise your radius, turn this up where you can see it, your radius won't be in the dead center. If this is slightly this way, you're going to be taking all your wood off on one side, and you're going to have a fretboard that has a high side and a low side. And when you're doing this, it's easy to see when you're hitting the sides and you're not hitting the center yet. But you can use those marks where you can see where you sanded, where you haven't, as witness marks. You can tell if one side's getting a little wider than the other side, you know you're putting more pressure on that side with your hand. You need to put pressure on the other side. Just use that center as a witness mark, and it will tell you where you need to put more pressure, where you need to be lighter, in order to get it pretty well even. If you really pay attention to that, by the time you get to this where you have just a tiny little area in the center from end to end, then you know you're just about down, and you can tell that it's even. And there's no point in going any further. Once you get it to where you've got just a little bit of untouched area showing in the center, that's as far as you need to go at this stage. Once you have the fingerboard glued to a neck, then I like to glue one on and let it set a couple of days, because tight bond, it has moisture in it. It takes a while for that to come out, but also tight bond shrinks as it dries. Until it's fully cured, it hasn't stopped shrinking. And that shrinkage, if you rush things and you just start leveling out that fretboard and getting it perfectly straight and everything, it's just a few hours after you took the clamps off, if you didn't give it at least 24, 36 hours to really cure, it's going to keep curing and it's going to keep shrinking, and it's not going to stay exactly where you want it. If you really take your time with that and don't rush it and really get it true, I like to spend some time with the radius block and a straight edge when I'm leveling out a fretboard after it's glued to a neck before I put the frets in. I will take that straight edge and I will put it on there, and sometimes I'll use the shorter straight edges and just check different areas. You find the lumps, and then you put your radius block on it, you put a little bit of pressure where that lump is, hit it a few times, take it off. And if you really spend a lot of time, once you put the frets in, you barely have to kiss the tops of them to level. You don't have to take off a bunch of metal. The worst things in the world I've seen is where people will do a fret job. They put the frets in and then they just grind everything. And if you do your prep work, you literally can go through and just find the high spots, knock them down, and then just barely kiss everything. A light little crown job, and you're done. You don't have to, don't make extra work for yourself, is what I'm saying. But spend a little bit more time getting this right, and it'll pay off. Anyway, I wanted to show you that. The first maple cap is is glued on now. Got that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the shape, and I'm going to cut me a piece for a caul to go on there to push everything down flat. But I'm going to leave room for a nail in each end because I really want this alignment, the dead center of this book matched cap, to be in the dead center of this, so that everything lines up really well. And I can, when I've got a laser, I'll shoot the line when I'm getting the neck in there and getting everything. I like to route the neck pocket a little bit slim, a little bit tight on this side, so that I can sand that side and sand the neck and make sure that the dead center is here. And then I can keep doing this until my laser is dead straight with the center line and the center line of the neck. It's really a good way to do it if you can pull it off. And And when you're doing an arch top, acoustic arch top or something like that, your center line is everything, because if you don't have it right, you're going to have to mount your tailpiece to one side or the other to get everything to pull in alignment. And if you don't do that, well, you got to start hitting it pretty hard. All of a sudden your bridge is going to shift on you, and then your strings are trying to hang off the edge of the fretboard. It's not a good thing. Alignment, like for this, alignment in that is so important. You know, with this one here, it's a bolt-on bridge. You can put it anywhere. It's almost like a acoustic flat top where you glue on the bridge. Well, if it was a little bit off, you can go one side or the other. But if you're very far off, the distance between your third and fourth string, when you're looking at it and you see the center line of that top where it's book matched, if it's off, you're going to see it. And if anybody else happens to be a guitar maker and they look at your guitar, they're going to look at that and they're going to be able to tell instantly whether your neck is in good alignment or not. Now, it's not quite as critical in a situation like this, but if you're doing an arch top, it better be right. All right, I'm going to get busy, make a little more sawdust. If you're doing the same guitar shape over and over and over, you can really design a nice way to clamp it. But I don't do the same thing twice, so at least very rarely. So I'm just fine with doing one-offs. And I don't like to put a whole lot of money, expense, and time into doing a fancy jig. To me, the best one is the one that works with what you have to work with. I like to use a little bit of tape to put stuff in place so that it doesn't move around when I'm trying to clamp stuff up. Just makes it a whole lot easier. In fact, you can see how I taped all this up because I don't want to be fighting it when I'm trying to get it clamped up before the glue hazes off. But here's the flame top. Here you can see a little remnant of where it was cracked before, right up in here. But what little bit the neck pocket doesn't route out and take care of will be covered by the pickup. And I pretty much finished the shape, all except for where I got to trim these tabs off. It's pretty well finished. And I put masking tape all the way around the outside edge to keep the glue off of it. And after I got it clamped up good, I went around with a damp rag and cleaned all the glue off, the excess glue. But now I don't have any issues with staining, and especially with a porous wood like mahogany. You get any kind of glue down in that grain and you have to sand pretty deep to get it out if you're going to stain anything. And I probably will end up staining this. This is some kind of mahogany, but it's very yellowish for a mahogany. It's not Luan, it's not that color or that texture, but it's very blonde, and I'll probably end up staining it. I haven't decided on a color for the top. Probably honey amber after I stain it dark and then sand it back a couple times to really make the grain pop. But here you can see the pins. I drilled a 1/16 of an inch hole, and I used some little pieces of 16th inch diameter welding rod, TIG welding rod, for pins. They fit good and tight. Yeah, that's coming out good. Now I just need to trim around the outside edge with a flush trim router bit. Take the tabs off, get that taken care of. And this thing's kind of doing another mission creep thing. My mission, I'm going to build just a plain little 4-string solid body in the cigar box guitar vein. Well, it keeps escalating because now Oh, this top looks so good. I've got to put binding around it so that it looks like a real Music Man balloon. That's the way it usually goes. Several of my more recent builds were in my head starting out. I'm just going to make something simple, and then it balloons. Oh, that looks so good. I'm going to just do this and just take it to the next level. And pretty soon, yeah, you got inlay everywhere, and that's the way it goes. So. Anyway, I'll get this routed flush and go through my binding stash and see what I have. I ordered cream colored knobs with gold writing, gold for the text, because it's going to have gold hardware, so I thought that would match. And just thinking about the cream colored knobs, maybe a cream colored binding would look good on it. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Anyway, until next time. Well, I'm at the point where I'm going to start cutting the scarf joints for these two necks. I've got the heart pound here in this little cutting jig, and there's lots of different ways to do this. You can do it on a bandsaw, a miter saw, all kinds of different ways. I'm just going to take the majority of the wood off with this. I have another jig that I use with a router that I will show you. Okay, I finished taking the wood down to the proper thickness to do the scarf joints. Here's the mahogany. I've already pre-cut them on the other jig, and they are good enough that I could actually glue them up the way they are, but I've changed my neck angle, headstock angle, and relaxed it just a little bit since I made that cutoff jig, and this jig routes to a slightly less degree angle for headstock. And how this works, if you can see, try to get in here, there's a piece of self-stick 320 grit sandpaper in the bottom. It gives it some bite so that it doesn't move around. And come around here and you can see how I've done this. This is threaded into the wood, threaded rod with a little knob on it. And this goes onto a metal plate that is bent. It's got a lot of spring in it, so it's got a bow in it, and that puts tension on it and pushes it down like so. And I have to use a wood block spacer to do the thinner part. This is already thinned down to so one of them is really close to 9/16 and the other one is a little less. It's more about just a few thousandths less. I don't know what the tuners are going to be on that one yet because I haven't received them yet, but I do have the ones for this, and I measured them, and they can go a 32nd over 9/16 and still have plenty of threads and have a good thick headstock. And the main reason you want to do as thick a headstock as you can is to get the tuner, the string, where the string attaches to the tuner, as low to the headstock wood as you can get it, so that you don't need string trees or anything like that. If your tuner post, this part of the headstock is thin, then your tuner posts are going to stick way up in the air. The thicker this is, the lower your tuner post to the top of the headstock, and that can solve you a lot of issues as far as break angle over the strings going over your nut, and give you a little bit of more down pressure on your nut. I like the Gibson style headstocks that lean back. I know they're more fragile if you drop them or whatever, but don't drop them. It's all what you like. If you prefer the Fender style, that's good too. Nothing wrong with it. But this is the jig that I set up, and there's another little adjustment here. Circle around the other side, and you can see this threaded rod sticking out on the end, and it goes through wood that's threaded, and it contacts the side of your neck to keep it from moving around side to side. If you can get it, I hope this will focus good where you can see it. And these lines in here are just relief cuts. This oak was trying to warp on me and trying to do crazy things, and use what you got. So I just cut some slits in it to relieve it so it wouldn't keep trying to bow on me, and cinched it down really good, drywall screws, and it's glued too, it ain't going anywhere. And then I flattened it real good. And you can make slight adjustments. If your line, see this one's not perfectly straight across here, if your line is not perfectly straight, I can shim it by taking a folded up piece of just a sheet of paper, normal notebook paper, and put a little strip on one side, elevate it up, route it again. I don't cut my neck to length until this is right, and then I can measure back the distance of a nut if I'm going to put a nut. And in this case, I'm having a 0 fret, but you still have to have something to hold the strings in place. So I'm going to be doing a nut basically. So I'll have to step back for that. But once this is done, then I can figure the length of the neck and cut off the neck to length. All right, next step. The scarves are all finished, and they look good. And you can see I've already put the rosewood fretboard up. It's already cut to length and slotted. And I figured out exact neck length I'm going to do on it. I'm going to bind it so it's going to hang over a 1/16 of an inch past, the fretboard will hang over a 1/16 inch past the end of the neck, and it'll basically look like a fender style neck into the body on that solid body. And here's the other piece that will be for the rest of the headstock. I haven't cut the wings yet. I've got the wood run out to the thickness, just haven't cut them yet. But I started laying out the cigar box, and I've got the Purple Heart fretboard cut to length, slotted. I went with a 22 fret on the solid body because it proportionately and everything, it looks right, more compared to an actual Music Man axis. And this one I went with 20 frets because I wanted to join the end of the fretboard to be right there. It gives me plenty of room for a pickup and 2 pickups. This stick that I put on top here is the 23, is the scale length. I cut it to the length of so you could see where the bridge would fall, or the crest of the bridge. And I'll put some type of tailpiece on it. I'm not going to, it's a through neck inside, but I'm not going to go outside the other end of the box. I'm just going to put a hinge or something for a tailpiece. But I've got the tape laid up here, so you can see it's on 1 1/4 inches right here. So I'm letting it hang over 1 inch plus the 1/4 inch for my nut, which it's a 0 fret, but you still got to have something to hold the strings. And I'll probably use a piece of corian because I've got some already cut to a 1/4 inch. I'll just cut a piece off and put it on there. So with 1 inch hanging over and allowing a 1/4 inch for that nut, we're at 27 1/4 and a 32nd. So it's like 27 and 9/32. But you take off our inch for the inch hanging over, and we should be 26 and 9/32 for the actual length of the neck to end just inside the box. And it'll have to have some neck angle on it. Dale Puckett's got a good video on neck angle, so I'm not going to go into that. I will show you what I've done afterwards, because I am going to dish out some wood here so that they'll have a little bit more resonance, let the top vibrate more. I'm not going to glue it directly to the back side of the top all the way across. But yeah, I'm going to cut that length, the neck to length, and get that all ready, and then I can start figuring out exactly what I'm going to do for a heel. Because I'm going to recess this and do a neck angle, I'm going to have to cut wood off of the neck back here, so I've got to build it up to another, and just make it thicker to going through the body. So that's going to mean another piece of wood. And I apologize for shaking the camera. I'm holding the tripod with my hand. Okay, I'm gonna get you in here. You can see I had a fairly productive day. The neck for the solid body is ready to glue up. I'm not going to glue this up until after I put the a carbon fiber reinforcement rod in the neck. So I have to route that so I can put that in. I don't want to put the scarf, put that on and put it in the way until after I've got that channel routed and got that epoxied in. I have a piece of aluminum that I like to clamp a neck to that's perfectly flat, so that the neck itself is perfectly flat when I glue the carbon fiber rod in. And it needs to go in, a little bit loose, not fit tight, be pushed all the way down in, and set up some weights to where I put a little bit of weight on it to make it stay in, so it doesn't try to float out of the hole when you put epoxy in, put it in there with epoxy. But you want it unstressed so that it goes in nice and straight, and the neck needs to be straight when it goes in. If you put the carbon fiber rod in with the neck crooked, it's going to be crooked from now on. You'll have to block plane it to get it straight, and it'll be a pain in the butt. Anyway, that's ready to do. Everything's cut to size except for the taper. I'm going to bind this fretboard, and I think I'm going to taper the neck a little bit just to make it a little bit nicer. I've got this piece here extra to put wings on with. After the scarf is glued, I can cut this up and make some pieces to glue on the side, put wings on. Now the cigar box, it's all cut out. It is ready to glue up, because I'm not going to put a reinforcement in. That neck is, piece of wood is pretty strong, 3 strings. It's not going to be stressed that much. I've got this piece to go for the heel and to go through the body. This is already dished out and set up for the neck angle. This has been trimmed, and I've got this dished out in between this point and this point so that the top can freely vibrate right here where it glues to it. And I wasn't sure what veneer I was going to glue on the headstock just to have something nice on it, and I forgot that inside this box is a piece of veneer in the bottom. So guess what's going to be on the headstock? I think that's perfectly fitting. Might as well use it. This thing's coming right along, and I'm happy. Everything looks like it's going to stay nice and straight on me, which is good. Alright, until next time. I just finished setting up to route out a 1/4 by 1/4 inch channel to put the carbon fiber reinforcement rod in this mahogany neck for the solid body CBG guitar. And I'm just going to show you what I've got set up here. This router guide, I've drilled a pilot hole to put the bit into to start it, so I don't have to plunge or do anything crazy like that. And I've got a mark here that I can see through this clear bottom on this router. It's for a stopping point. My guide is not long enough to put a mark out here on the ends, so I can go by that. But I'm getting ready to route this out. And what I've done again is a super glue and masking tape deal. And you can see right here, there's not very much wood getting glued across this. So I put plenty of glue on it in between the 2 layers of tape, and I made sure the tape was stuck down really well. With this being screwed down to this board with the drywall screw here and here, and the spacers back here. You can see I put some hacksaw blades here. Most of my necks I run down to 11/16 thick, but because this one is a really narrow CBG neck, I'm going to go up to a full 3/4 thick. So I'm having to use 2 hacksaw blades to make a 1/16 of an inch under shim back here to make this level. But I'm going to route this out. I was going to tell you what I used to do years ago before I ever found out about the masking tape and super glue trick. And we're talking 30 years ago. I used to take little pin nails and cut the heads off, and I would nail them through this piece of plywood into the neck, as close to the center of the neck as I could, so I wouldn't carve the neck and uncover the hole later. And I put one in each end. And with the heads cut off, when I took these screws out here and pulled the guide loose, I could just pull the heads right on through. And it used to keep the neck alignment very good. I never had a problem with one getting off or moving. And I've let this super glue dry a little while, so I feel confident that I can go ahead and do that without having any issues. Anyway, I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you what I've got. That went well. See the 1/4 by 1/4 inch channel is routed in. I'm going to take this out of the jig, put this to the side. Oh, and one little tip for you when you're going to route something like this. When you go to route it on a guide, make sure that you do not turn your router like this when you're routing something like this against a straight edge guide. Keep it straight like this as you go down, because if your base on this router is not concentric with the center and you turn it, your distance from your guide to your bit can change, and then you end up with a real wavy channel down through here that's just not going to work very well. Alright, let me take this out and I'll have more to show you. This is routed. Now I'm taking it out. Of course you saw that. One tip I can add to the others: masking tape and super glue gel. It tends to, the heat when it cures causes the adhesive to break loose from the masking tape, and it will leave it on your workpiece and on your guide, on the back of your guide. If you don't know this, you've pulled your hair out a bunch of times. Take the masking tape, the sticky part, and you can go through here just like this right here. And everywhere that masking tape adhesive is sticking to your wood, this right here will just pull it right off. No paint thinner on a rag, none of that crap, making a mess. You just go right down through there, clean it off. It comes off slick as a ribbon. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to get it close here. You can see some masking tape on it right there, the adhesive. And you just do that right there a few times. Sometimes you might have to drag it a little bit. Gone. Takes care of all of it. No headaches, no problems. I've got the carbon fiber rod cut to fit. It's dropping right in, and that should be good. Now, about this carbon fiber. This is not that good quality stuff from StewMac. I love that stuff, and I use it in necks, in high dollar necks. Super quality stuff that I'm trying to do sometimes. This is some Amazon, and it's just a hair under a quarter. If I could mic it just to check. Let's see. Yeah, we got 23.5, 0.235. So it's a little under a quarter. So it's going to fit in there a little loose, but I'm going to fit it with West Systems epoxy, so it will just be like a bedding compound. And this stuff, it's not as stiff as the stuff you get from StewMac, and I generally use stuff that's a little thinner and a little taller and put it in the tall way so I get the maximum stiffness in the neck. This is, I can flex it, but it's still way stronger than a piece of 1/4 by 1/4 maple that I just removed from the center of that neck, because it has a maple strip in the center. Now, this stuff is not perfectly straight. I put it on a straight edge, and I put this piece of masking tape on there to tell me that's what I want to the top. And that is going to put a slight back bow in. When I glue this in and push this down, it's going to give me a slight back bow in the neck. It's going to push it toward that direction. And in this situation, that's what I want. The neck is almost perfectly straight, and this going in there to put a slight back bow in this piece, which will be basically floating. but that slight back bow is going to give me a little bit more strength to control relief. It's only 4 strings. The high E, the first string is going to be a 0.01, a 10 basically. So it should be fine. This is not like some of the other stuff I build. I would never build a neck without a truss rod, but this is, pretty basic stuff. 4 strings, not a lot of thinking. So that's that. I've got the scarf joint glued up for the cigar box. This is the heart pine neck. Now I'll get this in here where you can see it. I've got cawls on both sides to keep everything flat, keep from denting the wood with the clamps and so forth. This clamp keeps the neck from moving and sliding. This clamp, once I get everything lined up, I took a razor blade, and as soon as I had it lined up by hand with all the clamps out of the way, I took a razor blade and put a score mark across this scarf. So I've got an alignment mark right there to go by. I don't have to look at all this and try to make sure this is perfect and everything, because I've already done that and put me a mark. So it's all, I put the glue on it, clamped it up where this couldn't move, and then just lightly started putting pressure on these clamps to get it drawn together, then start snugging this down. And just go a little bit at a time and you can get it lined up good. So I'll have to do the same process to that one as soon as after I get the rod in, because like I said before, this neck is going to be clamped to a piece of aluminum so that it is perfectly straight. And I'm not sure what you call them, but you use them a lot in welding, where you hold downs where you literally have a sharp point that sits on something that comes up and then you have a weight on it. I'm going to rig up a couple of those just to put one on each end, just to put a little bit of pressure on this thing to keep it down, because these rods will try to float up. When you put the epoxy in the hole, put them in there, you got to move kind of quick, especially if your epoxy you're using cures fast. West Systems, I've got, well, it's getting hot. I turned my fan off so you can hear me. Pot life is probably going to be about 20-25 minutes with the West Systems that I have. I'm using the 505 hardener. But anyway, got to put that in. Once that's in, I'll do the scarf, and then I'm going to taper this neck. I've did some figuring, and I'm going to do an 1 3/16 nut, and I'm going to do on both of them. I'm going to have to set up to taper the necks. I might as well do both of them and taper the fretboards. Binding came for this neck, or the fretboard in the body. I put some cream colored, kind of a little bit of a Les Paul deal there, but I think some of the Music Mans had cream colored binding on them. But I'm planning a honey amber top, and the mahogany's probably going to be stained, a brownish red color. It's just a little light for mahogany. It's very light wood though. Should have good resonance. Anyway, I'm going to start working on the body a little bit now. I'm going to pre-sand the top, the curly maple top a little bit, and route for the binding. I'm going to work on that a little bit, and I'll show you some more when I've got it done. Okay, I'm at the point where I'm starting to get ready to route out the cavity in the back for the electronics. But I wanted to show you how I was doing this and show you how valuable the process of using foam board is when you're doing a one-off instrument like this. Of course, you could use 1/4 inch plywood or something else for patterns. But what I did here was, this is where, of course, the knobs are going to be for the pots. And I lined this all up, and I took a nail and I marked the top in these positions. I drove the nail through and marked the positions where the wire channels are right in here, so that I can access them for the pickups. And I went ahead and cut this piece out so you can see my nail holes for those access, where the pots will go in and where the wiring goes. I'll turn it around, and I was able to do this here, and that is the cavity So now I can use that pattern to mark the cavity. And taking that, I took the pick guard material that I'm going to make the back plate with, put it on here, and I just put it at an angle so that I could not waste so much material. I've covered it with masking tape, and this is the side that already has some protection on it, but you can't mark on this. You might do it with a little small point Sharpie, but I just covered it with masking tape so I could draw it out with a pencil. So I drew that shape, and then I come around the outside of it with a straight edge, and this is going to be the shape of the cover. So now I just need to cut this out, and then I'll use this for a pattern to make my router jig that I will attach with masking tape and super glue to the back of the guitar to route out the recess for the cover so it can fit flush. So I'll use this cover that I'm going to cut out to make that pattern, and use this to make a pattern for the cavity route. So 2 patterns I've got to make. We have a cover. I have a cavity. You can see the place where the wire channel comes in. And the reason this goes so far back this way is I've got to put an end pin in here. And I'm going to put one that fits flush here and has the nut on the back on this side. And it has to fit in there this way. And I've laid it out on my foam board pattern so that I know that jack has got plenty of room and it's not going to hit that pot. So everything's nice and tight, and I'll be able to just drill that through on this side, but I'm going to wait until after the binding is on and level before I drill that, because I don't really want it to go into the binding. I'd like to miss the binding, and the binding's going to be 1/4 inch wide so that I hide these 2 layers of maple that I put on the cap here for a cap. But this thing, it's a little looser than I wanted it to be, and it looks worse than it is because of this the clear covering is on it. I don't want to take that off until after I drill all the holes and countersunk them and everything. I don't want it to fit tight because it's going to go and come as the wood shrinks and as it dries out. And once it stays in the house for a while, it's probably going to dry a little bit. I try to keep the humidity around between 45-46% most of the time. That way my guitars don't dry out, the ones I've got out of the case hanging up. Went ahead and rounded the edge around through here. My router bit's pretty dull. It's burning the wood a little bit, but all this has got to be sanded a lot. In fact, I routed this a little bit deep because I know I'm going to be sanding the crap out of it. I'm trying to level it out and probably have, I don't know if I'm going to grain fill it or not. If it was something I was going to sell, I might do that, but I'm not planning to sell it. I'm planning to use it and play around with it. But the foam board deal it helped me a lot with making my patterns, because I was able to use this to make the pattern to route out the cavity, and use this to help me lay out the plastic. And then I took and I made this routing pattern using the plastic, so I could route it out with that. So made it easy. I destroyed the cavity router because I needed to build it up thicker because I didn't have a shallow cut pattern bit. The shortest one I had is 3/4, so I had to get it up to about 1 inch thick to be able to use the pattern to route it out. But it's a one-off and I don't intend to use it again, so it doesn't matter. Well, I've had a productive day, but I'm not finished yet. I got the heart pine neck for the cigar box guitar tapered. I went down to 1 3/16 inch nut width from the 1.5 inch at the other end of the fretboard. I got the wings glued on earlier today, and they're dry enough to where I think I can cut them. And I just laid out the headstock. I'm not sure if you can see the lines. Maybe it'll focus on it. But I'm getting ready to cut it out. I just bored 16th inch holes for where the holes are going to drill. But I'm not going to drill those holes yet because this is that veneer that was inside that cigar box. It's a pretty mahogany. Nice color. But I'm going to cut this headstock shape out, and I pre-drilled those holes because I laid it out on top so I know exactly what was there. And little tip, if you do this, laying this out like this before you put a veneer on, and you drill your holes through with a drill press so you'll be able to line them up. I'll drill them back through with a 16th inch bit. I'll drill them from the back after the veneer's on, and that way I'll have a pilot hole where I can use a brad point bit on both sides of the headstock. You want to drill on one side about halfway through, and then you want to turn around and drill about halfway through on the other side. That way you don't get chip out. If you try to go through from the top to the back, you'll have a bunch of tear out back here. You probably already know that. But, and here's another thing, these 16th inch holes, if I don't do something, they'll fill up with glue when I glue this veneer on. Take some wooden toothpicks, stick them in a hole, break them off. That way you don't have a bunch of hard glue making your 16th inch drill bit go skating off to the side and messing up your alignment later. We're getting ready to cut this out. I'm going to cut this out to shape the veneer. And I tapered the fretboard for it, the Purple Heart fretboard. So it is tapered to the 1 3/16 nut. And I'm pretty happy with the way that's coming out. Okay, the body for the other one, the solid body, I took a DA sander and worked this top down because it was very rough from going through a thickness sander almost 30 years ago. So I took a DA sander, knocked it down pretty good and smooth, and I went ahead and routed it for the binding. And you can see the channel. It's for 16th inch thick. It's 1/4 inch wide. I wanted to make sure I covered both of the layers of maple. And so I'm going to try to get that binding on. I undercut the rosewood fretboard a 1/16 of an inch so I can put the 16th inch binding on it, so it'll be a bound fretboard. Oh yeah, it's starting to look like something you can paddle a boat with. Well, not really. I think it'll work. I guess you can see the holes where the tuners will go. 2 on top, 1 on the bottom. I cut a little piece of that mahogany veneer. That can go on there. I think that'll look all right. I think it goes good with the heart pine. In the same color family, anyway. So, getting closer on this one. Still got a good bit of catching up to do with the other one. I wanted to say a little something about scarf joint on the back. If you're very strategic about how you shape these shapes right here, when you round the neck, you can get rid of almost all of this where the scarf ties in. Right in this area there, you can just start peeling that back and going into the round of the neck, and you can just about make all that disappear. It's all in how you do these two little, I guess, coves, how you cover this shape right here. It has a lot to do with how you lay that out to make that look good right there. A lot of times I'll put veneer on the back and then I'll let it come down and then I'll do a stinger right here. But I'm not doing that on this one. I've been making some headway on this on these 2 guitars and haven't been recording very much video while I've been doing it. I apologize for that. It's this is a little new to me, and I'm not sure how much you guys want to see, but I'll show you my headway. This is the mahogany neck for the solid body. Got the wings glued on, tapered the neck, and the epoxy is set up a lot of stiffness, and it's so light compared to most of my necks with a double truss rod, you know, a double pull truss rod. I used to use just exclusively the single pull Gibson style rod in all my guitars, and just a couple years ago I decided to try some of the double pulls, and they do way more. It makes a heavier neck, but they work good. I mean, I don't have a complaint about how they work. They work fine, and it can be nice to have, you know, be able to make a neck go the other way. Like if you get sometimes when you put your frets in, you get a slight back bend, and being able to take that out while you're doing the fret work, that's a positive thing. Makes it easier. So that's a benefit to those rods. But not going to have that with this. It's pretty well straight. You can lay a straight edge on it. Turn this around where the best edge is on the inside. I don't know how well you can see this, but I'll run it along there, and it's pretty well dead flat. So it's possible that when I put the frets in, I can get a little bit of back bend in it. Just have to keep that in mind when you go leveling frets. Or you could string it up, not level the frets, just go ahead and string it up, put it under tension for a little while, maybe a couple days, take it off, and it probably be, you know, a little straighter. Just have to feel it out. You know, each one's going to be a little different. They don't always come out exactly the same. It's wood. Sometimes it has a mind of its own. So I wanted to show you this. I made a new caul to put the fretboards on with. And this fretboard is flat, the Purple Heart one, on the Heart Pine neck. But the Rosewood one is radiused. I radiused it to a 12-degree radius, a 12-inch radius. But I wanted to show you a good way to make a caul. It'll work good for the flat or radius fretboard. It's a fairly pretty straight piece of wood, and I took 2 little strips of balsa wood. You can get it at any hobby shop, and I just super glued them right down each side so that you end up with this, and that puts pressure on the outer edge of your fretboard, which is especially good if you have a radius fretboard, and it doesn't work bad for a flat. As you can see, I glued this on yesterday evening, and I wanted to show you how I did the alignment pins. Let me get this up close here where you can hope it'll focus on it. It's a piece of 16th inch TIG welding rod. It works really tightly in a 16th inch drilled hole. I drilled that one there, and you want to stay away from the edges, so if you're going to carve your neck, you don't want to expose a hole later. I've got one in this end, but I clamped it in place, drilled the holes, and put the pins in so I could glue it without it being so it couldn't move around on me. I cannot stand to glue something. You're trying to clamp it up with a bunch of C-clamps, and it's sliding all over the world, and you just can't hardly get it lined up. It's a pain in the butt. But what I did, you can see the hole right there. I left so the pin can go up in the hole, and it on both ends, so that it just sits right down on the pin, and you can leave the pin sticking up so that you can get a hold of it to pull it out. And with it in the fret slot, once you put the fret in there, you'll never see the hole. It works really well, and it's perfectly lined up. How do you like that taper? I know you guys are not used to seeing that on cigar box guitars, a tapered neck. But with 1.5 inches back here, 1 3/16 inches the nut, should work out and be a little bit more guitar-like. The string spacing, mainly I did this. I have a guitar that used to be my go-to guitar years ago. I've got arthritis now, and I've gone to lighter and lighter strings. One of my big things really has been making a guitar play as absolutely easy as possible, an acoustic guitar. And I've gone to shortened scale lengths to reduce the tension. lighter strings. I play extra light strings, 1046 sets, bronze strings. But I made a guitar with a Nick Lucas spacing at the bridge, and then I think it was 1 13/16 at the nut. And I made it in 2000. I don't remember exactly what year. Sometime around 2000. A little flat top acoustic Cassia brace guitar, and I played it for years. But the string spacing was an issue for me. The wider distance between the strings, when I would go back to one of my regular guitars that set up more a normal string spacing, it's just such a transition. It just takes you a good bit of time to adjust. And I remembered that, and then stepping into this cigar box thing, I'm like, yeah, I really kind of want to get that spacing a little bit more normal. It's still going to be abnormal for me with three strings on this one, but with the other neck and 4 strings, it's going to be almost identical to the spacing on most of the guitars I've been building for myself for the last, the last 12 years or so. But just wanted to show you guys that. I got one more piece of wood to glue on this neck, and then it's going to be ready for level out the fretboard and put frets in. This one's getting real close. I just got to glue this piece on the tail to make this stronger. Well, I just set up to do another operation, and I thought I would show you. I know you guys are going to start calling me the super glue masking tape king. Some of you are going to run out and buy stock in 3M or something because I use so much masking tape, and I do. I pulled out a piece of bird's eye maple veneer that I was going to use on the headstock of the solid body cigar box guitar, if you want to call it that. And after looking at it, it just doesn't match the top with the flame stripes and everything. And I had this piece left over of, well, here you can see the big crack that was in that top that happened when it was shipped. And it's glued up right now, but you can see how it wouldn't close up after almost 30 years of sitting around between 2 pieces of masonite. But I was able to get it sealed up enough to where I could use it. But anyway, I cut a piece off the edge of it to use for a headstock veneer, but it's too thick. It's a little over 3/32 thick. And my headstock wood is a slightly heavy 1/2 inch. I was counting on putting about a 1/16 of an inch on it. So 9/16 to just a 32nd heavy of 9/16. It's usually about max for most tuners as far as being able to catch enough threads to be able to tighten down snug and not have to worry about it. And it usually works out about right. And remember, the thinner your headstock ends up being, the more tuner posts you got sticking up high, which means your break angle going across your nut for your strings, it's always going to be less. Now, if you're doing a fender style neck and you're going to have trees or rollers or some kind of something there for the string to go under, it's not going to be a concern for you. Well, it kind of is just for looks, but I'm doing an angled headstock, so it's important to me because I don't want string trees or anything like that. So let me get you in here and show you what I've done. I got this workboard here, and use masking tape and super glue to attach a piece of this veneer big enough for my headstock. I got a piece of masking tape on the back side and a piece of masking tape under it. And what I did is the piece of wood, or it's veneered particle board, come out of an old cabinet. This is the pattern that I use to route the cavity for the electronics in the back of the solid body, or for the plate. But I just took 2 pieces of scrap wood, put on either side of it. I put some masking tape on the router base, and I super glued this, and I just tacked these 2 strips in place with super glue. And what I've done is made a router sled that I can just slide around over this. Whenever you're doing this, make sure you've got enough distance between here and the bit to be able to go all the way to one side or the other, and this should cover it fine. But it's just made out of scrap. I threw this together in like 5 minutes, and I'm going to thin this thing down to where I can use it as a head plate. and it will match the rest of the guitar. All right, I'll be right back with you. Well, it took longer to put my safety glasses and dust mask on than it did to route that and take off that material. Now I can dispose of all this. But here you can see, I just ran that thing across this way, this direction, until I just milled it right off. And now it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and it's perfect for doing a head plate. When you don't have a thickness sander, I haven't needed one for many years. My father-in-law had a cabinet shop that I worked with him in off and on for many, many years. And he had a really nice thickness sander. And when I used to do flat tops, I had access to that one. And later on, I got into doing arch tops, and I didn't need a thickness sander because you get the billets and you just carve everything. But I can see my battery is dying, so I'm going to turn this off now. But I wanted to catch this and show you guys this, so you can have one more trick up your sleeve with masking tape and super glue.